Hi everybody, welcome to Building Episode 14 of Let's Play Kerbal Space Program. Building. Resuming. 362 science to spend. In our last build, we made a space plane that we didn't actually use for any of the missions that we had. Well, in fact, I wonder how long that mission has before it expires. Let's check. Looks like 4 years. Oops, don't want to do that. 335,000 funds. 362 science. Into the science archives or the science technology center. We can't do this one because it's too much science. But if we work our way up, we could do some other ones. Like for instance, we could do advanced exploration. Maybe it's time to build a space station. That's tempting for 160 science. Advanced aerodynamics gives us lots of really useful things. An adapter, a crew cabin, a small cargo bay, clampetron. I think that's for later. Advanced landing gives us some more stuffs. 360. If I do that, that leaves us with 200. Which is enough for the two that we're thinking about needing to really get a moon mission going. Because we have landing. No, we need advanced flight control. We need this one, and this one. Alright, well I went deep on my aerodynamics node. I will stay shallow and take care of the rest. We'll research this, which gives us the Mark 1 lander can. 27,000 funds purchases all those parts. Fuel systems gives us some larger tanks for 38,000 funds. Heavy rocketry for 90 points. And 26,000 funds. And we still have 92 points left. Excellent. For any one of these, do I want miniaturization? Or do I want advanced construction? I think I want advanced construction. Rockomax adapters, detachment manifolds, radial decoupler. Yes, we will research this. And spend 18,000 funds doing so. So here in the vehicle Apollo, we are going to do an Apollo-like landing setup. That means we need to build several craft. I don't have a handy Delta V map. Hang on, let me check something. Okay, so I looked at a Delta V map, and basically it takes 600 Delta V to land on the moon, and therefore from low moon orbit, which is about 14 kilometers, and it also takes about 600 Delta V to get back from the surface to orbit, to low orbit. So we're going to build a lander can in 2 stages, and we are going to rely heavily on this information. Mass, and do a quick calculation to actually figure out what the delta V of this Apollo-like lander is going to be. So we are going to use lander can as our landing vehicle. It is going to be bringing down with it a science... Actually, I'm sorry. This is going to ascend back into space all by itself. So we just need the smallest, littlest bit of something on the bottom here. And we have fuel lines now. So I'm going to rotate this somehow with the correct key. Put maybe 4 of them on there. And we can stick a little spark engine right there. Okay, now here's the question. Our total mass, 1.7. Divide that by our empty mass, 0.9. Phone, you need to be in scientific calculator mode. We take the natural log of that, kaboink. So I got 1.8 is my full to empty mass ratio. Natural log of that. Yeah, 0.63. I have mail.
Something with a card in it.
Oh, yeah, it's probably my replacement bank card since mine expires soon. Okay, natural log of that, 0.63. Oh, I need to plug my phone in. Battery's dying. Multiply that by the force of gravity, which is 9.8 meters per second, and then multiply that by the specific impulse of this particular engine, which in a vacuum is 300. 300. So this little guy has 1,869 delta V. In other words, it is capable of returning from the moon. So let's do this. Basically, we don't need nearly that much fuel. Could stick those guys right there. I'll stick them underneath. Like that. Now, again, run that same calculation. Calculator. And calculator in scientific mode. 1.2 divided by, empty this out, 0.8 gives us a 1.5 full to empty mass ratio. Natural log of that times 9.8 meters per second. Multiply that by the specific impulse of this thing, which is 300 in the vacuum. And we're still looking at 1,192 delta V for just this thing. Okay. That's the Apollo lander. Oh, we do need one thing though. Structural. We're going to abandon this in orbit. That's what we're going to do. It's going to get abandoned. This is a one-man mission. This thing goes down, it comes back up, it gets abandoned. Because we don't have anything else. Okay, now for the science experiments. Stick a decoupler on there. Science. We know we can jetpack up there if we need to, but I will rotate this. Not that way, like so. Now this whole, oops, let's refill our fuel here. This whole thing now weighs 1.5 tons. So we just need to make sure that we have whatever it takes to give this thing 500 delta V or better. That might be something like this. Bloop. 2.5 tons divided by 2.0 gives us a full to empty mass ratio of 1.25. Natural log of which gives us 0.22 times 9.8 times the specific impulse of this thing in a vacuum, which is 345. 754. So this should have no problem landing. Now, the only thing I don't like is that this is rather tall, right? So what I could do instead of all this would still be tall and top heavy. Let's try this a different way. Utility. Structural. Science. Bam. And that's a little shorter and squatter. Well, now here's something interesting I can do. I can always pack on more fuel. So let's put on all the science stuff that we're going to be doing and put our landing legs on this thing. Utility. Okay, science. We're going to bring down a bunch of experiments. We've got a Presmat barometer we want to bring. We want to bring a thermostat. Here, let's put these over here. Presmat barometer and thermostat can come over here. We want to bring a couple of goo canisters. This whole thing's going to be piled up into a into a shell. Okay, now let's run the calculation one more time. So there are mods that you can use that does all this stuff for you automatically, but it's not hard. Just figure it out really quick. 1.8 divided by empty the fuel tank. 1.4 times 9.8. Oops. I'm sorry, divided by 9.8. Got ahead of myself. Natural log times 9.8. Mistakes. 1.8 divided by 1.4 equals natural log. Multiply that by 9.8. Multiply that by 300. Is that what this thing's specific impulse is? 300. 738. So if this thing's going to do descent and landing, descent, and ascent, we need to probably double the fuel. So let's take a look at that. $2.2 divided by, whoops, bonked my microphone. 1.4 natural log times 9.8 times 300. 1300 delta V. Assuming we are able to completely reach orbit without having to use any of this fuel, this craft can land on the moon and do a bunch of science. Now we are going to add so we won't be able to do a docking thing. I have to do fuel transfer. We could do a different kind of reentry vehicle. Wouldn't that be fun? Just a nose-first diving reentry vehicle. So what I don't have, I don't think, are docking ports. And without docking ports, this whole thing kind of breaks down. Sort of. Not really. We can figure it out. Here's what we do. We put that there. No, we don't. Yes, we do. We really don't need to get rid of that. We can keep it all the way up to orbit. And what we're going to have sitting up here is a little guy like so. Aerodynamic has heat shields. Wrong heat shield. Stick a heat shield on there. Stick a command pod on there. Now what I really want to do actually is this. Pull out the special things here. Grab a subassembly. Change my root part to that. Apollo Lander. Apollo Mun Lander. Okay, so we have that as a subassembly now, so I can, you know, just glue another one on if I wanted to. Now we start a new craft. Starting with this. Standard stuff. Utility, put a parachute on. Aerodynamic, put on a heat shield. This is the return vehicle. Fuel tank, oops, I'm sorry, structural. Decoupler. Little fuel tank. Little engine, just for putting around. And that should be plenty to get us out from the moon and back to Kerbal, right? Now we grab our subassembly that we made and attach it to the bottom. Kerbonk, just like that. Put a few struts in here for stability. Okay, so this little guy is going to be responsible for getting us home. Now, getting to the moon. Fuel tanks. Oops, structural. Just like that. Fuel tank there. Do we have we do have aerodynamic fairings now. So we're going to build a fairing to protect basically the Mun Lander. It'll be an interstage fairing. Somewhere around here I should be able, there it is, closed fairing. Kabang. Okay. There it is. And once again, down here we need some struts. So everything inside of this fairing should be nice and aerodynamic and saved from the rigors of all that noise. That gets that nice and stable. One fuel tank. And the Terrier engine. So I haven't consulted the Delta V map. In fact, I think I will. I'm going to find out. Let me make sure I have my fuel full in all of these. Well, let's run the calculation first and see if we're even concerned about it. So, 8.6 divided by 6.6 gives us a full empty mass of 1.3, natural log please, times 9.8, times 345. Delta V of 894, so that's nearly 1,000 Delta V, or 894 I think is pretty good. Assuming that we are in circular orbit. So hang tight, I'm going to go take a look at that map. After consulting the map, we do see that we need a bit more. I think we need about this much more. Once again, same old calculations, 9.7 divided by 6.7 natural log times 9.8 times 345. 1,200 Delta V. Okay. This whole thing, you know what, I should get my staging set up the way I want it before I get any further. Parachute needs to be its own stage. This decoupler needs to be its own stage. Yes, those are together. These are also together. This is whenever I want. It's probably going to be down below this one, actually. Now, I wonder if I can tighten this up. I bet I can make that tighter. Delete fairing. Build a fairing. What's the minimum radius this needs to be successful? Looks like that. And close the fairing there. Okay. Well, anyway. Now we need to get this whole thing into orbit. And that requires about 3,500 Delta V. And now we have larger lifting stuffs. So, structural. One of those. One of those. Fuel tanks. A couple of these. Engines. One skipper. Make sure my staging is where I like it. Oop, nope, that's not where I like it. Okay. So, now boosters. Too long. Structural. All right. I'm going to start with 2 pairs of these thumpers. And they're going to be at full throttle just to get us some speed off the ground. Then the skipper takes over. Go ahead and copy those around here. About like that. Put on some structural so those things don't wiggle around. And aerodynamic. Nose cones. And tail fins. In here, I don't have batteries that are that big. So here's what we can do though. We can actually slip in and hide a couple batteries right there. Like so. Okay. Solar power generation would be useful. So I'll just throw that under the fairing. And the reason I did that is because I know that for control, I'm going to want an advanced inline stabilizer. Gives us some torque to control things with. That torque off. This torque off. We'll start with this one off. No, actually, we can go ahead and run with it on. That's fine. Lock this gimbal, because we'll be using the the fins to fly it first. Okay. Those all go at 100%, then they fall away. I think I want the skipper to fire at the same time. This and this. At some undetermined time, I'll ditch the fairing, which gets rid of that weight. Then we are into our... So this is our ascent vehicle. This whole thing. Ascent, reach orbit, circularize, all that stuff. Should be managed by all of this. This is the transfer vehicle. And this is... Mun Lander. Let me think about this for a second, though. So what happens is all of that gets decoupled. Basically, the Mun Lander separates itself completely from everything else. It flies down, does its thing, comes back, and then we're into... The crew jumps over here, hops in this cockpit, activates the engine, flies back home, separates, re-enters, all that good stuff. It's more complicated than it needs to be, but it's still kind of fun to do that kind of stuff. So I'm going to do a test flight of just the orbital to make sure that we can reach orbit with what we have. noticed a couple things. First of which is that we need launch stability enhancers holding this thing up. Secondly, we need a better crew person flying this thing. Valentina, you're it. Put those in there. Okay, everything's set and stable. That reaction wheel is running torque. I'm going to turn it off. I'll torque on later. Full throttle. And epic fail. Yeah, that was just a strut being in the wrong spot. Sometimes the auto placement of these things is weird. Okay, we have more thrust than we need. Up we go. Well, that means we can kick over early. Whoa, whoa. Turn off SAS. Let our rocket just stabilize. Let the fins do the working. That's what they're there for. Slow down the engines. Goodbye, stages. Full throttle, full speed ahead. Just making sure, hoping that the skipper has what it takes to get us all the way to orbit. We can, you know, it obviously has plenty of thrust to weight ratio, so we might put another fuel tank on here if we need to. This doesn't have any fuel in it. Okay, I'm going to back off the throttle because I want this thing to tip over more than it is now. Since we have good thrust to weight ratio, I want to be tipped over by 45 at 25. We'll try that ascent profile. So this launch style that I'm using is actually incorporates a full gravity turn. You notice I'm not putting any control inputs whatsoever in this thing. I am just letting the natural fact that gravity will pull this rocket over, and the fins and the flight trajectory do all of the work of pulling it over for me. Okay, we're going to need more in this stage. I do believe. We shall see. $609 fuel. We'll see if we have enough to circularize. Now we activate the torque. We can go ahead and ditch this fairing because we don't need it anymore. We're high enough in the air where it doesn't matter. Turn that torque on. 33 seconds for this maneuver. We have 609 fuel. Can't remember what our consumption rate is. But at 15 seconds, we'll go full throttle. Consumption is 18. Might have just about enough. How about that? It's able to reach orbit. Okay, we had a successful test. This thing is ready for its Grand Moon mission, where Valentina is going to go down and land on the moon. And then we'll do a variation of this, probably to rescue Jeb. So hang tight for that. We'll get that done in episode 14 proper. Wanted to thank you guys for watching my special feature here, and tune in next time. Goodbye.